They're down and one. Ball's on the ground. And it's recovered by Nashawn Wright.
Turn on your mic. That'll help. When you're talking and the mic isn't on, it's not a good thing, Max. That was the end of the Chicago game, all the way back in early October. We didn't know at the time, but that fumble at the end of the Bears game in a loss was the last time this year that Jayden Daniels actually started and finished a game. In fact, he only did it 4 times this year and only 3 times fully healthy. Good morning, everybody. It is official. Jayden Daniels shut down by the organization for the rest of the season. I know many of you agreed with me last week when I said that Dan Quinn was telegraphing this outcome last Monday. Seemed pretty obvious after the way he fidgeted his way through that press conference last week. There's a lot to this. And then again, there's not so much, meaning that we can go through all of the things said before the Minnesota game all the way through yesterday and pick them apart one by one and try to make sense of it all. But it's actually not that necessary. The team didn't shut Jayden Daniels down because he's too injured to play football. They shut him down because they feared a future conversation that might actually be about him being too injured to play football. Fear of the worst case is why we're here and they're here. All of the other stuff, like, he needs to play, and we've got nearly 30% of the season left before the Minnesota game, to he was cleared to come back into the game against the Vikings, to a day later he's just sore, to 2 days later he's out for the Giants game, to yesterday he's being shut down for the rest of the season. All of that is just parsing and nitpicking a bunch of stuff that doesn't really get to the point. He's being shut down not because he's injured. It has little to do with anything other than they feared. They were spooked by the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario being having to face the music if they played him and he actually legitimately got hurt. Now, I think they were less squeamish about the worst case scenario with 5 games left. Hence, he's played against Minnesota. But with the season's finish line in sight, the reward of playing him just didn't match or exceed the risk of the what if. What if we put him back out there and he got legit hurt? An ACL or an Achilles. My God, can you imagine having to answer to that? Nah, we don't want any part of that. That's what it is, guys. That's what it is. And sure, some of what Quinn said yesterday made some sense. The 2 games in 5 days thing makes sense to me. I brought it up last week with Philly on Saturday, so not even a full week of practicing heading into the upcoming game. And then the Dallas game on Christmas Day, 5 days later. I get that. But hiding, partly behind some sort of elbow soreness is not what this is all about. It isn't. I mean, in my opinion. I think that if they were in playoff contention and needed the game on Saturday, he, of course, would be playing. He would have been playing Sunday in the Meadowlands against the Giants. He would have come back into the game against Minnesota. This is fear of what would happen if, God forbid, they put him out there and he actually got injured. This has likely been an intense back and forth since the Minnesota game, with everybody weighing in, ownership, GM, head coach. Quinn answered some of that yesterday. My personal view is that Adam Peters probably pushed and drove the conversation more than anybody else about shutting him down. And they decided, with probably the driver being Adam Peters, that they would err on the side of fear. Actually, let me rephrase that to be nicer and maybe more accurate. They erred on the side of cautionary fear, more of a fear dealt with in a protective way, maybe even a rational way. That's subjective. I was all for him playing with 4, 5, 6 games left. I'm not as upset today about him being shut down with 3 games left. I don't love it, but I understand it, I guess. My preference, however, on how they messaged this publicly yesterday would have been for them to be more direct rather than, kind of standing behind some bogus injury talk and medical eval. I think communicating that they are shutting him down because he's the franchise quarterback and he's too valuable to risk with just a few meaningless games left in a lost, miserable season, I actually think that would have been fine. They could have said that, and I think most would have understood and actually appreciated the directness and honesty. Jayden's season, man, what an absolute S show of a season. He played start to finish in the Giants game, fully healthy, start to finish in the Chargers game, fully healthy, and start to finish in the Bears game, fully healthy. Bear with me today because I'm not fully healthy. But I'm not shutting it down. That's it. 3 games he started and played to completion fully healthy. Packers game, he got hurt late. Would he have come out had there been a half left or a quarter and a half left? Maybe. Cowboys game obviously got hurt midway through the game. Seahawks game got hurt late in the game. Vikings game got hurt in the third quarter of the game. Of the 17 2025 Washington games, Jayden Daniels, after having one of the greatest, if not the greatest rookie seasons in the history of the game, started and played healthy 3 of them, which is why it's going to be really difficult, no matter how much some of you will push me on it, to legitimately evaluate his 2025 season. How do you do that when he started and played 3 of the 17 game fully healthy? I've heard many of you. I've read many about the regression. It's not just the injuries. It's not just the players who have been injured around him. Have at it. You're not going to convince me to go down the path of evaluating 3 out of 17 in which he started and played fully healthy. Ultimately, he only played in 6 games total if you add up the minutes. 6 of the 17, of which maybe in 4 of them, or I'm sorry, in 2 of those 6, did he have an actual healthy supporting cast. It's really hard. I think it's really hard to evaluate almost anything from this year, but that's not what's going to be evaluated, the other. It's going to be him primarily. And there's no doubt that we're going to have to, those of us that are big Jayden Daniels fans and big Jayden Daniels believers, we're going to have to deal with the people who say sophomore slump, regressed to the mean, those mathematicians. Funny. You're going to have to deal with it. I'm going to have to deal with it. They're going to point to all the stats, the stats in which he started and played fully healthy in 3 games, participated in 7, actually, if you add it all up, played in 6, okay? And it's going to look like, oh my God, his completion percentage down 1.4% from last year. I'm sorry, 1.4%. That's not true. My fault. I was comparing him to Marcus Mariota's current completion percentage. His completion percentage down 8.4% from last year. His average yards per attempt, 6.7 versus 7.4 last year. Oh my God, he threw 25 touchdowns last year and only threw 8 this year. But somebody will actually say this. But last year, he threw 9 interceptions, and this year he only threw 3. And last year, he was sacked 47 times, and this year he was only sacked 18 times. You're going to get some morons who will start to that degree. They'll take it to that degree, not realizing what they're doing. His QBR 45.9, 67.7 last year, 88.1 passer rating, 100.1 passer rating. Look, I will concede, no doubt, that when he was in there, it didn't always look great, but it didn't look as bad as many people will make it sound like. The Giant game was not a bad game for Jayden Daniels. The Chargers game was an exceptional game for Jayden Daniels. The Chicago Bears game, minus, unfortunately, the botched fumble and an early interception, was actually a really good game by the quarterback. But he didn't really look that great in the Dallas first half into the third quarter. Certainly didn't play well against Green Bay. No doubt. Nobody did in that game. They were manhandled at the line of scrimmage. And then the Minnesota game, more bad than good. No doubt. I think that was the lowest grade I gave him this year. I gave him a C-. And there was a lot of context around that too. They were not prepared offensively for protection. They didn't run the football enough. And Cliff took some of the blame. But here's the bottom line. His season is almost impossible to evaluate with a straight face. If you watched every single second of every single game and are being objective rather than just, essentially helicoptering in and looking at box scores, you know that he didn't really ever have a chance this year to get into any kind of rhythm. And I would say that about pretty much the entirety of the football team, but the focus from here on and until he takes the field on September 7th or whatever it is next year for the opener is going to be about this unbelievable sophomore regression. I won't say to the mean. Most of you mathematicians know what I'm talking about. What's next? What's next is what I said last week. I wouldn't risk anybody of note the rest of the year. Ridiculous to play Terry McLaurin in the final 3 games. Utterly absurd if they put Laramie Tunsil anywhere near the football field over the last 3 games. He actually got hurt on Sunday. Terry actually has been really hurt. The quad was legit. Why put him out there? Why put Sam Cosmi out there? Why put Tyler Biotish out there if you've got somebody that can function at center? I mean, I just, you're shutting down your quarterback, not because he's legitimately injured, but because of cautionary fear. You should have a healthy cautionary fear for players that have actually been injured this year and another that's coming off an injury like Sam Cosmi. What's the point? I'd start that process today if it hasn't been started already. The process at the end of the season where mysteriously players start getting sent to IR. It makes little sense if your starting quarterback isn't going to play, especially considering that he's healthy enough to play. There's just little to gain without him and having your other good players out there playing. I would sit Marcus Mariota the rest of the way. What's the point? Aren't you going to try to re-sign him when we hit free agency? Play Josh Johnson. Call up Sam Hartman. Play him. This wouldn't be the first time with, maybe 3 games left. It's a little aggressive in going in this direction. The league probably doesn't love it, but you can certainly put Terry, Tunsil, and Cosmi legitimately into IR and sit them. I don't know why you would risk your best players for 2026 when you basically admitted that 2026 is now the focus by shutting down your starting quarterback. Doesn't happen all the time, guys. Joe Burrow's playing the final 3 games. He had an actual injury this year. He had surgery. He missed a lot of games. Cincinnati says he's going to play the final 3 as far as they know right now. Somebody mentioned to me, do you think all of the serious injuries to Mahomes and to Micah Parsons over the weekend, that played a role? No, I don't. I think this decision was made a week ago. I think they just put off for a week what they knew last week. It was pretty obvious when we ran Quinn a week ago Wednesday, when they said Jayden's not starting, and when he was asked about when he anticipated a return, he said, "Yeah, we can't answer that right now. We'll address that next week," meaning this week. And then you watch the rest of it, and he's asked about the Minnesota game, and he said 17-0, didn't really feel like 17. The whole thing was not not the smoothest. It's not his job to be super smooth with the medical. He's not a doctor. And by the way, and I said this last week, he's not obligated to tell us the truth. He's obligated on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays to tell the truth about who's in and who's out, who practiced and who was limited and who was out completely. And then that culminates with an actual injury report on Friday. But yeah, what's next? What's next is 2026. Yeah, I would have, had he played Minnesota, remained healthy, without the, elbow being sore, sored up again, and he had played against the Giants, I'd be all for. Let's do it. Play him against the Eagles. Let's see if we can, contribute to some sort of Eagles misery here at the end of the year. But since that's not going to happen, Tunsil, Terry, Cosme, Luvu, Marcus Mariota, I don't get it. Why are these guys even sniffing the field, especially a guy like Tunsil, who you could argue this season was the best pound-for-pound football player on the team? So I don't want to see Laramie Tunsil out there in these final 3 games. He got hurt. He injured his shoulder. Would be an absolute that would, you'd start to question competence. Sit everybody that means something to your 2026 season. Get a better look at all the young guys. You've had an opportunity all season long to get a look at a lot of players you didn't think you'd have a chance to get a look at. That's true. It might be like we've seen everybody at this point, dude. We've gone through multiple practice squads worth of players. We got a good read on everybody. We're just going to try to go win. Well, if you're going to go try to win, then your starting quarterback should be playing and getting reps and getting into a rhythm that he never had a chance to get into this year. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. This is not that hard. Like I said at the beginning of this, there's kind of a lot to it, but really not that much. This comes down to they didn't shut him down because he's too injured to play football. They shut him down because they feared a future conversation that might actually be about him being too injured to play football. Fear of the worst case is why we are here today with him being shut down over the final 3 weeks. And again, let me be clear on this. Cautionary fear is a nice way to put it. It's a different conversation with 3 to go and 2 being played within 5 days of each other, and the first one on a short week heading into it. I don't hate this as much as I would have hated it, a few weeks ago. But I understand why they're doing it in terms of, well, let me be clear. What they said is not why they're doing it. What they said yesterday. This has nothing to do with him being, medically not cleared. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980, your reaction to Jayden Daniels being shut down. Mine is pretty simple. It's like, yeah, there's a lot to it, and we could nitpick and parse away at what Dan Quinn said yesterday and then go back and play a lot of what he said last week and before the Minnesota game. But it's really not about any of that. There's no real injury necessarily concern that's shutting Jayden Daniels down, in my opinion. The team is shutting him down because they fear the worst case and the worst case conversation. And that's why we're here. You know, they didn't shut him down because he's too injured to play football. They shut him down because they feared that there could be a future conversation where they had to talk about him being too injured to play football. That would be the worst case. With 3 games left, a 6-day ramp up, short week to the first one, then a quick turnaround to the second one. And then you're talking about a season finale in which, you know, a lot of teams end up sitting it. It just wasn't worth the squeeze. The juice wasn't. You know, all of the other stuff, you know, from before the Minnesota game, what they said, after the Minnesota game, what they said, he could have come back in 2 days late. You know, he's just sore a day later on Monday. 2 days after that, he's out for the Giants game, and we're not sure about the future. You knew then. You know, I told you last Wednesday when he was talking, he's done. He's shut down for the year. We're going to get that news next week. More likely than not, they might take it another week. You know, they might stretch it out and really play up the injury thing. We didn't get him cleared in time, and it's a short week, and then it's another short week, and we couldn't. I mean, they could have done that. My one preference, actually, as I mentioned, is the way that Dan Quinn publicly messaged this yesterday. I think it would have been fine for them to be super direct and super honest, just to say, you know, this organization has a franchise talent quarterback for the first time in decades, and he's just too valuable to risk with just a few now, not several, but just a few meaningless games left in a season where just nobody's been able to get into rhythm. And every single thing that happens seems to work out for the worst case. I think that would have been fine if that's what Dan Quinn had said. If he had just come out and said, look, just going to be direct with you. This guy's a franchise quarterback. We haven't been able to get him or anybody else into rhythm. He got banged up a little bit, but if we had a big game on Saturday, he'd be playing because he's our franchise quarterback, and he'd give us the best chance to win. But the game isn't for anything. It's meaningless in the larger context of things, and we're just not going to risk him on this. He's literally gone into 4 football games this year and been banged up in 4 of them. You know, injured to a certain degree in the Green Bay game, injured to a certain degree in the Dallas game, injured to a certain degree in the Seattle game. I mean, that was a true dislocated elbow. And then, you know, sore on the elbow after throwing the pick and trying to chase down Andrew Van Ginkel. We just don't see that the juice is worth the squeeze here. Sure, we'd like to get him reps. We want him to get reps. We want him to develop more. We want him to get into a rhythm. He hasn't been able to do that for a lot of reasons. If you guys have been paying attention rather than just reading box scores, you know why we haven't been able to get into a rhythm. But with 3 games left, that rhythm isn't worth the risk. I'd have been fine with that. You know, talking about medical evals and doctors, and he wasn't cleared, and yet he's going to practice. And I mean, you know, we knew this a week ago if you were paying attention. 301-230-0980. Let's start with our guy, Michael. Michael, go ahead.
Kevin, how are you? Long time no talk, my man.
Hey, Michael, how are you?
Good. So I'm with you. I'd rather see him play. But if I'm Marcus Mariota, I'm excited because I see 4 or 5 potential starting opportunities for me next year. So, yeah, give me those 3 games to prove my wares, and maybe I can sign a deal with the Raiders or the Falcons or the Jets. You know, there are opportunities for him where I could see where he would relish the opportunity to play those games. So if they're going to shut Jayden down and they come to me and say, I'm shutting you down, like, hell no, put me in there.
Honestly, I think he's done enough And now you're going to face the Eagles twice. Now, the Eagles in the season finale may not be the Eagles on Saturday. But Marcus Mariota, if he has a desire to do that, Michael, and I don't know that he does. I think Marcus is, he's a different guy, and he's very happy for the first time in a while in his professional career. He has spoken to that. The fit is right. The feel is right. The mentorship opportunity is right. The system is right. There's just so much that's right for him. But if he did desire an opportunity, I think even though, the record as a starter is 2-5 or whatever, I think he's played well enough in enough games to not risk looking terrible against a really good defensive team, let's just say in the Eagles, who will be hungry to lock up the division because they can clinch the division on Saturday with a win. But more importantly, from the team standpoint, I want Marcus Mariota back. So why am I going to risk him? Or why am I going to give him more of a platform to get, starter interest? He didn't have, I don't think, legitimate starter interest last year, but obviously he didn't play that much last year. Jayden played in 17 games. Jayden played in 55 of 57 college games. That's why I'm not sitting here fretting that it's going to be an every year thing. I'm a little bit concerned about the way this year went. I am. But I think we're going to hopefully, knock on wood, look back and say, yeah, that 2025 year aberration, terrible, year altogether. We had what we thought we had in 2024. But if they if they want Mariota back, and I would assume that they do, I would make sure that he's healthy coming back. That's just me. But anyway, what else you got, Michael?
And as far as the rest of the team goes, I want everyone out there. I don't. This is a loser mindset.
Yeah.
No, if you're healthy, you play. That's it. Period.
Michael, they already made that decision by not playing their starting franchise quarterback. So with that information, that's where I am. Now it's like, okay, if you're all in on 2026, be all in on 2026. Don't half-step it. Can you imagine if Tunsil or Terry got hurt in one of these last three? Yeah, I'd prefer everybody be playing until maybe the season finale, understood, but it's not the direction they're going in. And there's a little bit of understanding from my standpoint of the cautionary fear and the way the season's gone. This season has been, hexed for the most part. I mean, the worst injury season in recent franchise history, but really distant franchise history. And it just doesn't seem like it's going to fall into any kind of real, sustaining rhythm. So I would move on. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Let's go to Robert in Annapolis. Robert, go ahead.
Well, good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
What happened to Dan Quinn's Honesty Monday? Didn't he have some...
Tell the Truth Mondays?
Tell the Truth Monday. That's what it was. Okay. Remember that? I agree.
Well, he still does it.
Call.
There's still all of that.
The NFL, any of these professional sports, are entertainment, and we as fans pay to be entertained. So you have fans that have paid for season tickets or just getting tickets to individual games. They deserve the right to see the best product out there, especially if they're for a particular team, and to be able to see those teams' particular players, their favorite players, whatever the case may be. You can't have a mindset where everything is based on the fear of what could happen and how it would affect next year. You don't know how next year is going to unfold regardless. You got 32 NFL teams. At least half of them, if not more, don't even have a realistic chance of being a Super Bowl contender or champion. So you can't just view everything from that mindset, in my opinion. But
the mindset changes next year, Robert. You understand this because the games actually mean something when they start in September.
I understand that, but suppose things occur, your team, my team, anybody's team, and they start off poorly. Where's this going to go? Now we're going to go start at midseason to sit our star players.
They didn't start it at midseason. They started it with 4 games left. 4 games left. That's not midseason.
I'm saying suppose the situation occurs where it starts earlier. The fall starts earlier in the season.
I don't think you would see that. Why would you see that? Why would you see an 0-5? Let's take it to where you're headed with this. A team starts 0-5. their star quarterbacks have been in and out of the lineup. Are they going to sit him for the final 11? I don't think it'll ever lead to that.
No, I understand the mathematics of it. I guess I'm trying to make a principle here is, again, it's entertainment, at least to me. And I'm sure
but most fans, Robert, a lot of those people that paid for the tickets, a lot of those people would actually prefer Jayden not play and not risk him for next year.
I know. I know that.
Okay.
To me, it seems to be a lot of the younger fans, too, because it's a different mind. We grew up in an era where things were different. Everything was different. And we didn't see in the NBA star players taking rest days or whatever they call it. I guess that's my point, Kevin. It's entertainment. We want to be entertained. Sure, we want to win. Sure, we want to get our team to the Super Bowl. But that just requires so many things to line up for that to occur. But in the meantime, entertain us. Give us your best effort. Play your best
caveat
players.
emptor, Robert. Right. I mean, buyer beware on all these sports products now. Yeah.
I understand. I'm just putting out my thoughts. And
I got
it. Have the same
I got it.
Process.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
just want to live in fear. If he could hurt, if he was dealing with a knee injury rather than an elbow injury, that's a different story. But if he's able to play effectively, then he should play.
But Robert, you do understand when a guy literally, because he's been in and out of the lineup 4 times this year, right? Knee, hamstring, elbow, re-elbow, 4 different times. He's only started and completed 3 games this year fully healthy. All right, at this point, out of the 14 that have been played. It's not just that he got banged up, missed a few weeks, and now you're shutting him down after he's played 3 straight. It's all of it. It's cumulative in this particular case. And it really does feel like this season, not that, true general managers, head coaches in multi-billion-dollar organizations should, make decisions based on superstition or feeling like a season is hexed. But this one really never got started. And so do you think it's going to get started with 3 games left? Probably not. And you risk that worst case that I described. That's what they fear. Imagine them having to get up on Monday, a week. Let's just say he played against Philadelphia and he got legitimately hurt. He tore an Achilles. He tore an ACL. What that conversation would look like, that's what they feared. With 3 games left.
There you go. The what if this happened? What if that happened?
Yeah.
If I'm a fan of any team, your team, I want to see him play because that's my guy, if you want to phrase it that way. That's what
not everybody agrees, but I would have liked to have seen him play, certainly as they were planning on playing him for the final, 4 or 5 when they activated him, not activated him, but cleared him for the Minnesota game. Thanks for the call, Robert. Look, there's a lot here, right? I mean, it's not like he's played 14 games and they're shutting him down for the final 3 because they're meaningless. That's not the case. By the way, if he had played all 14 start to finish fully healthy, they wouldn't be 4-10. But that's another conversation altogether. There's been a hell of a lot in and out. Not only him, but everybody in and out. That's why with the everybody, I'd start shutting some of those people down. No reason to take your best players for 2026 and put them at risk if you're not going to do it with your best player. Aveen, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. I hate the decision. I'm totally against it. This is pretty much like Jayden Daniels had the season off. There's nothing really to evaluate him on. To me, I totally agree with you. He only played 3 real games. If you look at it, and a lot of it isn't his fault. A lot of it is the roster management, the fault of roster management. I mean, the Dallas game, he had no receivers. The Green Bay game, the offensive line was a shell of itself. Seattle game, he only had the ball once, and then the second time he had the ball, they were down 21-0. But then Vikings game, he's been out over a month, didn't really have a chance with all the quick pressures. Again, barely had the ball because he has a clown show defense. So a lot of that just isn't his fault, and there's really nothing to evaluate him on. And I'll say this, the last 4 games, I was against 4 divisional opponents. Teams are going to be playing 6 times next year. That's really valuable experience, and that's something you
Well, the Giant regime's going to change, clearly.
Right, but a lot of
whole new
defensive
coaching
players
staff
are going to be there. a lot of those defensive players are going to be there next season too.
Yeah.
So that would have been a lot of good film to have to evaluate on, to build off on in the off season, and to potentially feel good about going into the off season. So I totally disagree with it. I think that would have been good experience. And Quinn and Peters have lost so much credibility to me this season. I know they don't really have much of a clue what they're doing in building the defense, but I'm wondering if they have much of a clue what they're doing in managing the quarterback. Because, yeah, the Seattle game was negligence based on the context of the game, but the other games I feel like he's been kind of a little too overprotected, babied, and coddled. And so I just feel like, the Falcons game he probably could have played, the Broncos game he probably could have played, the Giants game he probably could have played, and all of that hurt him in his consistency, in his ability to get into a rhythm. So, and I'll just end it with this. Overall, going into this season, I feel like I can say, they kind of set him up to fail. I mean, they gave him one of the worst receiving cores in the league, and defenses made the adjustment this year that we're just going to crowd the line of scrimmage and send quick pressure, immediate pressure, because none of his receivers can get open quickly. So he's going to be running for his life this whole season. I mean, we went into the season with a 30-year-old receiver, starting 30-year-old receiver, starting 35-year-old tight end, and then two 29-year-old receivers, both with extensive injuries, both coming off injured seasons. So he didn't have a chance with the receivers and playing a 425 Dallas game with guys picked off the street. So the injuries, you can say injuries, but some of that is on the front office. And I'll just end it with this, Kevin. There's a real argument about, receiver being a really important, valued position. Just look at the NFC, the whole NFC, how much has been invested on receiver. The Eagles, the Cowboys, the whole NFC North, the Rams, the 49ers. And
you're out of breath, Aveen. Slow down. You're good.
I know. I'm trying to get this out fast. And then, you had the discussion about elite quarterbacks and Ravens, Chiefs, and Bills and receiver. And just look at how much they've invested the past couple of years. They obviously value it. They've all drafted, had recent first or second round picks, picked that receiver, picked that tight end. Even though they have elite quarterbacks, they've made big trades to get receivers. They have Chiefs and Ravens have a lot of investment in tight ends. So I just think this was a failure by the front office in managing him and not setting him up for success.
Appreciate that. I think, not having Terry McLaurin on the field, not having a lot of those receivers on the field, I'm not so sure it wouldn't have worked again this year, but we'll never know because they didn't really have an opportunity. Again, I mean, the Adam Peters conversation is a conversation that is hard to have, just like any conversation is hard to have based on the availability of their best players over a 17-game season. Their starting quarterback played and started 3 of the 17 healthy. Now, if you want to go after Quinn for a few games or go after Kingsbury for a few games of getting less out of less, that's not unfair. The Minnesota game was a disaster. The Detroit game and the Seattle games were disasters. There certainly were some moments, the Minnesota game being by far and away the number one because of the opponent they were facing. Now, watch Minnesota go on this run and finish with, how many losses do they have? They can't finish with a winning record, can they? Are they 6-8 or are they?
Losses.
They're 9. Are they 5-9?
No, you're
They're
right.
5-9.
6-8. 6-8.
6-8, so they could actually end up with a winning record. Thanks, Aveen. Appreciate it. Let's go to Bones. Bones, go ahead.
Hey, what's going on, Kevin? Shout out to my main man, Max, man. Hey, Kevin, man, they call me Bones for a reason, right? Because, I was always skinny when I was young and stuff, playing ball and stuff, right? So, man, at this point, you know what I mean? I ain't mad at the decision, you know what I'm saying? Because I was a little concerned about, him getting them little nicks and cuts and stuff like that. So now, what he need to do is focus on, strengthening his body, man. Go in the gym and put that work in, man. You understand? Get out on the field, work on his mechanics, man. You know what I mean? And get prepared for 2026. Everybody that they shut down, get prepared for 2026, man. That's all.
Well, they got to get
right now, man.
Good call, Bones, as always. And look, the people that want Adam Peters to take on a lot of the accountability. Some even want him fired. But he's got a lot of work to do. I mean, this roster right now, especially on the defensive side of the ball, is truly unprepared to play NFL football games. They got to get a coordinator, and they need 4 to 5 new starters. I mean, legit starters. And they got to find a true, impactful defensive player in their front seven. They really need that desperately. Frank in Charlotte. Frank, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning. Good luck with them trying to find an impact play on D. That's going to be tough in the free agency. But, yeah, I kind of agree with what Bones is saying. I think that I'm elated that they're actually shutting them down. I wish they kind of would have shut him down after the Seattle game, really, be honest with you. But I'm elated because, it'll give him time, give his body, time to heal. He is an older, he was an older rookie when he came in. So
his body's
looking
not,
at the wear and
there's
tear.
not a significant period of time for him to heal. He barely played this year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they don't want it to mount. I think that's what they're looking at, probably another injury or something like that. But also, they're looking at they want his confidence back. They want that player that played in Baltimore, that was in Cincinnati, and Arizona last year, and against Atlanta when we needed to get in the playoffs. That's the player they want back. They want that player to have that confidence back. And he didn't have a lot of confidence this year, and I'm not sure why. Maybe because we didn't have the receiving core that was needed for him to succeed. But a lot of that, I just think that they don't want his confidence damaged any more than it actually is. Of course, his physical body as well. They were terrified about him having a Patrick Mahomes incident tearing his knee up. So I can understand why, and I'm elated. I'm looking forward to 2026, and because I think he's going to come back stronger. He's going to have more resolve, and I think he's going to hone in more on his fundamentals. I think it's going to be a great year.
All right. Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it. Those of you on hold, stay there. Your reaction to Dan Quinn yesterday, speaking for, I think, the organization, not just for himself. I think Adam Peters probably was the driver of this, but I think they were all participants, including Josh Harris, in the decision to shut him down. But your reaction to Jayden Daniels being shut down for the remainder of the season, a season in which, when all is said and done, you will not be able to change the fact that he only started and completed 3 of the 17 games fully healthy. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right. Happy Tuesday, everybody. We start off with Monday Night Football, where the Steelers, they waxed the Miami Dolphins by a score of 28-15. Also in college football, Arch Manning has announced his intention to return to Texas for the next college football season. Tonight, over on 106.7 The Fan, we got Caps hockey. They're facing the Minnesota Wild. Puck drop set for that one at 8 p.m. Pregame gets rolling over on The Fan at 7:45. Right here on the Team 980, we got Troy taking on Jacksonville State in the Veterans Bowl. Kickoff for that one set right here on the Team 980 at 9 p.m. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type of the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch programs like Take Command and Denton's Office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us. Turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports, and that is what's trending.
Again, a four-man rush. It's batted into the air, and Andrew Van Ginkel gets the pick, chased by McLaurin, and down inside the 30-yard line.
And that was it. Sorry. That was it. That was the final play of the 2025 season for Jayden Daniels, a pick six as he checked into a screen in the direction of Andrew Van Ginkel. By the way, he almost had one against Dak, and Dak kind of pulled it back on Sunday night if you were watching the game. He started to throw in a direction, and Van Ginkel started to step, and he pulled it back, and he ended up looking to the other side. He didn't let it go. Experience. Better coached, maybe. Who knows? That would be it on December 7th, the day that will live in infamy. Not for football reasons, of course. But Jayden sat Sunday, and he will sit the final 3 games of the season, ultimately playing in 4 games, start to finish, 3 of them fully healthy, start to finish, and sitting out the final 4 games of the season, shut down. As I said earlier, this was not, in my opinion, all right, this is not, a shutdown by the organization for the rest of the season because he's too injured to play. They didn't shut him down for that reason. They shut him down because of the fear that if they played him, they'd have to have a conversation with everybody about a legitimate injury. That was a worst case that they just could not get past. And that's why he is sitting the final 4 games, officially shut down. If you missed it, I had one. Look, my overall was 4, 5, 6 games left. What are we talking about here? He's the franchise's starting quarterback. If he's healthy, he plays, but with 3 games left, having just sat him, perhaps unnecessarily so, against the Giants, with a short week of preparation heading into the game against the Eagles, maybe playing this game without Laramie Tunsil, and then a quick turnaround to 5 games before the Christmas Day game against Dallas, and then a season finale that typically is, a game in which bad teams with nothing to play for sit a lot of key players anyway. I understand it more, and I'm less upset about it now with 3 games left and the circumstances around the 3 games than I was with the conversation about shutting him down with 5 or 6 games left. And even last week, wasn't thrilled that he wasn't going to play against the Giants. I don't love it, but I guess I understand it. I would call it, in a nice way, cautionary fear, more of a fear that emanates from wanting to protect him, maybe even rationally so. But make no mistake, this isn't about Jayden Daniels being too hurt to play. If this game meant something on Saturday night, he would be playing in the game against the Eagles. He would have played Sunday against the Giants. I doubt that he would have ever been brought back or held out, for the final quarter and a half against the Vikings. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Jason in Laurel. Jason, go ahead.
Hey, Kev. Thanks for taking my call, you and Matt.
Sure, Jason.
We disagreed with this on air. I wanted them to do this. I do think they bungled the delivery. And I wonder, Kevin, and I wonder what you would think of this. I honestly think, for me, you got to go back to the Atlanta game. I think he could have played in the Atlanta game. He obviously wanted to play in the Atlanta game, but they held him out. If he was ready enough to play, why did they hold him out? And I wonder, moving forward, if the games don't matter, if the team's not in contention, are you not going to play him? I don't know how I feel about that.
Look, there's a lot of context around this one, Jason. He's missed a lot of football. Yeah. He's missed a lot of football because there was a knee injury, there was a hamstring injury, then there was a legitimate, elbow dislocation injury. And then, they say he, sorted up in the play against Minnesota. And there's just never been an opportunity for him to play like consecutive games and get into a rhythm with all of his guys around him. So what's the point now? I think next year will be different. I don't think they're going to sit him for the final 3 games of the year next year, even if they're out of contention, if he hasn't, had the kind of season, injury-wise and otherwise, that he's had this year. I think, that would be a different feel. They feared just the conversation after he's been in and out all season long and he's only played 3 games start to finish fully healthy about, oh my God, God forbid he were to get a real injury like an Achilles or an ACL, they would never be able to answer that. They would be skewered
Right.
up one side, down the other, not just by the social media basement dwellers, but by national media members, credible media members who skewered him after the Seattle game for having
he
him
got
in
killed for
there.
the Seattle game. You're right.
Yeah.
Do you think this will impact preseason, Kevin?
I don't know. A lot of you have reached out to me to say this is all, this all stems from essentially a very easy training camp, a laissez-faire training camp in which they would tell you, yeah, that may be true, but there was a reason. We didn't have any of our key players in training camp or in the offseason either, especially at wide receiver. And so, yeah, look, and they're not the only team to treat training camp and preseason this way. Might
No,
it
they're
change
not.
the
They're
way
not.
they view next year? Maybe. I always err on the side of I want to see guys play. I don't think you
Me
get
too.
better playing football without playing football.
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't want my guys in the first preseason game playing against guys that are fighting for a practice squad position. But when you get to the second and
Right.
third game and you got starters, let's play them for a half and see what happens and see if that helps out a little bit more. Thanks, Jason. I got to get to a break. Ivan, Anthony, Paulie, Mark, Ralphie, Ian, JYD, stay on hold. We'll do this for another segment. Ben Standing's going to join us on the show today. We'll get his thoughts. Evan Washburn from CBS. Evan's a really good sideline reporter. He will join us on the show today as well.
Hey, Dan, I know you said you guys informed Jayden of the decision earlier. What was his reaction?
I would say disappointed, but understood as well. Like, this guy's a competitor, JP. That's what always stands out about him. I think the fact that wanted no part of IR to practice, be there with the guys doing that, I think that speaks of the teammate and why. And so that was important to him, to show that support and wanting to do it as well. So that told us a lot, also about it, because it would have been the easy way to say whatever. And that's not how he is at all. So I like the fact that he's competitive. I like the fact that he wants this time. And so that's an important piece to it.
That may have been the biggest part of, and the most honest part of Tell the Truth Monday, that Jayden's not thrilled with it, but he understands. I don't know if he understands. Who knows? I understand this. IHOP's great. Introducing the IHOP value menu, where all your breakfast faves are just $6 each every day. Where else can you get a big filling sit-down breakfast for only $6? Go to your Happy Plates with the $6 IHOP value menu, available every day at IHOP. $7 in some locations. Here we are, hour 2, following the day in which Dan Quinn did what seemed to be pretty obvious that he was going to do it a week ago, or last Wednesday anyway. Telegraphed it for the most part that they were going to shut Jayden Daniels down for the year, and they've done it. And the net of Jayden Daniels' second year following a great rookie year is he played, a total, when you add it all up, 6 games, played in 7, but played the equivalent of 6. 4 of them he played start to finish, and only 3 of them did he play start to finish fully healthy. My view on this is, A, certainly not surprised that we got this news. I told you that last week. B, not really, going to be gullible enough to think that this is because, medical hasn't cleared him or it's some sort of injury. They didn't shut Jayden Daniels down because he's too injured to play football. They shut him down because they feared having to have a future conversation that might actually be about him being too injured to play football. Fear of the worst case, and I'll give them some credit and call it cautionary fear, is why we are here, and he's being shut down for the last 3 games. As I said last hour, we could nitpick everything Dan Quinn has said for the last couple of weeks, going back pre-Minnesota game to post-Minnesota game to the Monday following the Minnesota game to 2 days following the Minnesota game to what he said yesterday. What's the point? If you've been following this in a granular, detailed way, blow for blow this year, you know that now we don't want to have any part of a conversation in which we put him back out onto the field for 3 meaningless football games at the end of the year, especially with 5, a short week heading into the first one, 5 days between the first and the second one, in which we have to talk about a serious injury. So that's why they're doing this. I think most of you understand that. The question is, do you agree with the decision? The one thing that I didn't love, I personally feel they could have communicated it. Dan Quinn could have communicated it more directly on Tell the Truth Monday by saying we're shutting him down because he's the franchise quarterback and he's too valuable to risk on 3 meaningless games in a season that was lost a while ago and has been miserable, and everything that can go wrong seems to go wrong. Okay, we're not sitting him down because we're superstitious. We're sitting him down because there's no real opportunity for true rhythm to be established. And if there is, it's not worth the risk of having to stand up here a week from now and say he's done for the next 6 months because of a serious injury. I think most people would have understood that. 301-230-0980. Let's go to some people who've been on hold for a while. Paulie, go ahead.
Big guy, man. How you doing? L to the W.
Back at you.
Hey, man. Listen, man. Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, after that Giants game, they got on their phones, going around the league, and they seen this big headline that said, Pat Mahomes torn ACL. And that was it.
I think it was it a week ago. I think it was it a week ago, but I can understand why you would think that. But as I said a week ago or on Wednesday, it's over. He's going to get shut down. We're going to find that out probably this week.
But that was the nail in the coffin, man. You see Pat Mahomes, you see Michael Parsons, and now you just like, you know what? We don't want to be in this position. And them two guys are actually playing for something. You know? Right. So right now we need to be in season, preseason mode with everybody else. You know, you want to get them guys. If you got any nagging injuries, go ahead and sit it down. You know what I mean? If not, we might throw you in here for a couple of series, but we go in heavy rotation. And I think that's how they're going to have to play the rest of the season, man. But moving forward, I want to say this, man. You know how I feel about Cliff Kingsbury. I'm not a fan. And the happiest thing for me in this offseason was finding out he got another job. Got a head coaching job somewhere else. But if that doesn't happen, that guy has to take a serious look at his offense, man. Because you telling me you waited 14 weeks and 3 injuries to your quarterback to commit to the running game. That's why that game kind of perplexed me the other day. Yeah. 14 weeks and 3 injuries to your quarterback to say, I'm going to commit to a running game. So moving forward, we already see that you're not really protecting him. He has to switch his offense up. I'm not saying get out of the shotgun. I'm not saying, no more read option, but clearly he has to do a better job at coming up with an offense that's not going to only protect him, but also protect the defense until the defense shows that it's a viable defense. Because I'm sorry, they're not going to be able to get it done all in one offseason on that defense.
Right.
They're still going to be lacking somewhere on that defense. So next year, Cliff Kingsbury, he's going to have to devise another type of scheme or something where, we're not going to be talking the same thing next year about, Jayden getting hurt at the end of the game if we up by 21 points or down by 21 points because he's throwing the ball or we running the quarterback power or whatever it is. But Kingsbury's going to have to take a look in the mirror and go to another part of his playbook and try to master that or something because, you know what I'm saying, man. I don't like the dude. Personally, I want him to go. But if he's going to be back, he's going to have to do something different because the jig is up. The jig is up on his offense, man.
Look, I thought it was interesting, and I think it was a reaction to the Minnesota game in particular. But I also think that it was opponent-specific, too. It's the first time in a while they've faced a team that was bad on defense. They haven't faced a team that was bad. I mean, I guess Miami, to a certain degree, wasn't great on defense, but they haven't played a bad defensive team since they played Dallas, back in, early November. And I think that was part of it. But I hear you. I think you've got to – I mean, I still – my preference still would be, and I think Jayden would be a great fit for a Shanahan-style scheme, but I'm not ignoring that last year happened. With Cliff Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator and not a great supporting cast. All right, I got to roll. Let me
bailed him out last year, man.
Yeah,
Jayden bailed out Kingsbury last year, man. I didn't like the offense last. That's why we went through that 3-game lull last year when the offense couldn't do anything. Teams that figured out his scheme is predictable, and Jayden was just healthy last year and he was able to overcome a lot of that. I said this year, team said we're not going to let 5 beat us.
Yeah, I mean, their offense was not great against Philadelphia in that short turnaround game, but it was fine against Pittsburgh. It was, against Dallas. Dallas was the team that they struggled with defensively more than any other. They didn't struggle with Philly as much as they struggled with Dallas. But, even looking at
up front.
It was the Philly game that was the one real, the Philly game and the first halves of the 2 Dallas games that were the only time offensively they weren't clicking last year, and the Tampa game early on. All right, let me go. Appreciate it. Let's go to Ralphie in Rockville. Ralphie, go ahead.
Hey, Kev. So with this injury, I believe, well, I don't even want to say injury. So I believe Jayden's only real injury this year was in the Seattle game with the elbow, and Jayden obviously admitted it. I think the
knee was an injury, and I think the hamstring was an injury. Not serious injuries, but they didn't sit him in the Raiders game because he was healthy enough to go after the Green Bay game.
I don't believe it, because when the knee brace, he only wore for a game and a half, and it seemed to me the knee was never really hurt. And Jayden said it wasn't hurt, and he said he wasn't hurt. He said he was good to go. And I at this point in time, I believe Jayden more than I believe in Quinn and Peters at this point, because he admitted to the elbow injury. He said, "Yeah, man, it's still banged up. It's still, sore." And when the player's telling you that, you got to take him for his word, because Jayden is not the type of guy to lie to his coaches. Every coach that he's been with speaks highly of him. So I just think they're overprotective of him because he's a franchise quarterback. But going forward next year, we can't do this. If he says he's ready to play, we got to take Jayden at his word, because this narrative of him being injury prone it's really ruined his reputation this year. And I think a lot of people were banking on it because they didn't want to see him be as successful as he was last year for whatever reasons, they had. But when a guy plays, I think you said 55 out of 57 college games, and now all of a sudden he's injury prone.
20 out of 20 as a rookie, even though there were a couple, there's a rib injury there. There was, he had a couple of things here and there, but no, I mean, this guy has not been injury prone until this year. Now, the reason people were concerned that he could be is at LSU, he did get banged up in some games, leave for a series here or there, and then come back. And his frame is the conversation centerpiece for those that feared that playing football a certain way could be problematic for him. But this year is the aberration in his career in terms of games missed, for sure.
Right. And I think people, blaming Adam Peters and all this, I think you just got to give Adam Peters this offseason is going to be really revealing of how Adam Peters manages a roster. He's facing the most adversity he's ever faced. So I'm really interested to see how he's going to manage this roster situation going forward. And we'll just, take it from there. And also, I really hope Jayden, his confidence is still there. And I think it is. I think he's one of those guys who's really competitive, as Quinn alluded to. So I think he's good. And, we'll wait till next year. Thanks, Kev.
Yeah, thanks, Ralphie. Let's go to Ivan. Ivan, what's up?
Kevin, how you doing, man?
Good.
Hey, Kevin, you have me?
I got you.
Okay, Kevin, listen, I understand the optics, for fans and shutting down and season ticket holders for shutting down a quarterback. So I get why they waited this long, for a reason. But, what I'm mad at, Kevin, is the hollow victory that they got over the worst team in the NFL. We can't even get losing right. The difference between a top 3 draft pick and picking 8 to 12 is massive for a team that squandered an entire season. And you go in the next season having multiple needs to make this a playoff roster. I would suggest to you, Kevin, that
it was the one thing your boy did right. He lost the right way most of the time.
Yeah. Listen, winning a Super Bowl is not easy. I told you all these years, Kevin. Listen, based on everything that you've told us this morning, and include the fact that they've known this and they've had these discussions since last Wednesday, tell me again the benefits of a Giants win, Kevin.
Look, it's hard for me to, in the environment that they played the game without their starting quarterback, without their franchise starting quarterback, to give you a lot of benefit from that. From our standpoint, from their standpoint, and I'm talking about the players and the coaches, after losing 8 in a row and being prepared and approaching it differently, I think there's probably some value. But for Adam Peters, wouldn't surprise me if Adam Peters deep down was like, would love for the Giants to score here after that fumble, tie it, and then somehow win it in overtime. We gave a great effort. But I hear what you're saying. Everybody understands that.
No, they don't. Obviously, they don't. But anyway, Kevin, listen, I would suggest
remember this. You can't tank. Like, players aren't going to be on the field purposefully trying to lose.
I get that. You can't tell players to go out there and lose the game. I understand it. I understand that. But look, I would suggest the regime was resigned to this outcome back when we were 3-6, and we made no moves at the trade deadline. So the Giants' meaningless win to me is malpractice. You don't tell players to lose. I get that, but you at least have that discussion with the head coach that you're going to sit Jayden the rest of the season. And to me, that brings the competency of Peters into question. He had a chance to get a draft haul at 3-14, but not so much at 4-13. To them, I say, great job. Look, they were more concerned about the reps for the quarterback that he should have gotten in the preseason versus when you're 3-9 and you're making decisions for next season. I just think they boggled that, and they should have lost that game. And I agree with everybody that the worst thing that they did was the handling of Terry at the beginning of the season, when Terry didn't get they didn't get him on the field, and he wasn't signed and ready to play, and Jayden not having preseason reps. But anyway, it's sad that I know any team.
I mean,
even a winning team.
Ivan, they can't get losing right. But don't you think the Giants were in the same mode? It was the wrong opponent to try to get losing right. They played a horrible team on Sunday.
Well, I think the Giants probably, even with a win, the Giants probably are still in first place, aren't they?
No. If they had won, they would be behind two teams with 2 wins. They would have had a third win.
Right, but
you picked the wrong team to be
3.
upset about them not winning against, because the other team had as much, if not more, incentive because they've got a complete coaching change coming. So hard team to try to play hard into a loss against the Giants.
Kevin, the Giants already arguably have their quarterback. So even at 2 or 3,
so do
they
we
can still get a draft haul for moving back, which is what we should have done.
Well, you know what? The two teams should have gotten together and figured out who had more to gain by losing, and then somehow exchange like a 5th and a 6th round pick to do it right. Come on, man.
Kevin,
you can be upset that they won the game, but not how they went about the game. I mean, they had their backup quarterback in there. They got a defense that is literally a third of what they thought it would be before the season began, or half. I mean, they haven't tried to lose. They just couldn't help but beat the Giants, who stink.
Well, we're just a little bit better than we were with Rivera. When we tanked with Rivera, we told him to go out and win, and that
he was trying to. That's
anyway.
why he took Sam Howell out and put Jacoby Brissett in. He was trying to win. Good God, he almost pulled it off.
Malpractice, Kevin. Malpractice.
It's not malpractice.
Later,
it's not malpractice when if you view the Giants as a patient that was DOA anyway. Let's go to Ian. Ian, go ahead. Hello, Ian.
Uh-oh. He's there.
Go to Mark and Largo if Ian's not ready.
Now you're talking about the president of the Get Rid of Adam Peters Club, and the VP is Ian of the Get Rid of Adam Peters Club.
Oh, no. He's the president of the Fire Everybody Club, right?
I'm the president.
I think he wants to fire everybody, not just Adam Peters.
About this since 24. I've been talking about getting rid of Adam Peters since they made that trade.
Oh, you're the president.
Yeah,
I forget. I don't keep track of all your opinions.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, look, here's the deal, Kevin. The caller who called up a few callers ago and said Jayden played 55 games and, now he's getting this label of being injury prone. That is spot on. And I never thought about this. Look, I love Adam Peters. I'm not trying to get Adam Peters fired. I know it seems that way.
You just said you were the president of that club.
Well, whatever. But
no,
Kevin,
whatever.
This
is what you do. You're like, honestly, you just said Ian's not the president. I'm the president of Fire Everybody.
On Friday at this thing on Friday. I really can't wait to see you. So you can punch me in the face. I know you can't wait to do that. But that's
what are you talking about?
Story.
Where am I going to see you on Friday?
Aren't you doing this junkie thing on Friday?
I don't even know what you're talking about, but I'm sure I'll be told about it and lectured about it afterwards. But probably not. Probably not on Friday, actually.
Okay, that's fine. Well, look, here's the deal. I do think Jayden should have played an Atlanta game. I think Jayden should have played the Kansas City game. I think if you're going to bring Terry back, don't bring Terry back if you're not going to play Jayden in the Kansas City game. And I do agree with the call you just had a second ago. Look, Jayden had a dislocated elbow right at the Seahawks game, which was 2 days before the trading deadline. You couldn't do something to get more draft picks?
I think they may have tried, actually. I should have mentioned that to Ivan. I don't think that it was from a lack of trying. I think that there just wasn't anything out there that was good enough to move, let's just say, Daron Payne. I'm not reporting that.
Right.
All right. I'm just giving you, one of the names that was in play at the trade deadline. It would not surprise me if they had conversations at that point at 3 and 6.
Lattimore? I know Chicago was sniffing around to get Marshawn Lattimore back. I mean, because Dennis Allen used to coach him in New Orleans.
You know that? Yeah, it sounds like your sources are better.
And remember, that was the week before he got injured, because he got injured against Detroit.
Yeah.
That was the week before his injury. But see, look.
I can't imagine with the way he was playing and with his contract, there was a lot offered for Marshawn Lattimore. But it sounds like you've got some information, so you can share it with us.
No, I don't. Okay. No, I don't. But you are the man. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
See you, Mark. Anthony, go ahead.
So, Kevin, tell me if you recognize this reference. Wowsy, wowsy, woo, woo.
Wowsy, wowsy, wazoo.
Wowsy, wowsy, woo, woo.
I don't. It sounds familiar, but I don't, so go ahead and tell me.
Bad luck, Slep Rock.
What?
That's what this year has been. Bad luck, Slep Rock.
Okay.
The Flintstones.
Oh, no. I did not get that reference. I did not get the Fred Barney, Wilma Betty reference. Sorry.
Well, just the character that had the cloud walking over his head everywhere he went. So
okay. All right.
That's basically what this year has been.
No doubt.
So
you're fine with him being shelved for the last 3?
Yeah, there's nothing to gain. Close your eyes and imagine him getting severely injured, a leg.
I know. That's what they had to do.
And then all hell breaking loose in the DMV because
he
played and got hurt.
Oh,
Can you imagine that?
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, no. We get to this point, and that's what they feared. They feared that presser where Dan Quinn steps to the podium and says, yeah, we didn't shut him down, and now he may be shut down for the first part of the 2026 season. No doubt. That's why he's getting shut down.
The whole season.
Yeah.
So, but on a positive note, because of injury or they just don't have one, there are 5 teams that need a quarterback. So at a minimum, we need to hope that 3 quarterbacks rise to the top. There's a game record out there in the draft somewhere. Bain or the guy from Texas A&M, somebody, I don't know who it is, but there's a game record out there. We have, as we stand now, there's a potential to be able to land that player.
Yeah, there's also going to be a potential if those quarterbacks are on the board when Washington picks, and there's desire from one of those 5 or 6 teams you say need a quarterback to trade back and acquire more picks. The draft is such a crapshoot that the more opportunity you get, if you're going to hit on an average of, say, 35%, which is basically the average of a competent draft, anything higher ends up being a good draft. It's better to hit 35% on 10 picks rather than 6 picks. So let's see what happens with their position when all is said and done. Clearly, these final 3 games will be very telling as far as that's concerned. Right now, I think they're slotted. I had this the other day before the 4 o'clock.
I saw either 7th or 8th.
Yeah.
So as we stand now, all the teams that need quarterbacks are ahead of them. You got the Jets, the Browns, the Colts because of injury. You got the Raiders, and then you got the Cardinals.
Right.
So
The
they're
issue,
all
of
in
course, is
position
it's not
ahead
like
of
a
us.
great quarterback draft, at least the way it's viewed right now.
Right. That's why I said we got to hope at least 3 of them rise to the top.
Right.
To potentially.
So
get
if they
them
don't
movement.
win another game, the worst they can finish, it looks like, is 8th.
So
with
they
the
can't
8th
get
pick.
up any further than that.
They could. I'm just saying the worst case, if they lose out, would be 8th.
Worst case.
Yeah,
Okay, I
it depends on what those 7 teams in front of them do the rest of the way as to how far they would move up.
Right. So that's the bright side of looking at it. The season has been a disaster from the start of training camp all the way through. So for all the people who are upset that he's getting shut down, you need to do some reflection. Because like I said, if he played in any of these 3 games and went down with a devastating injury, you'd be kicking yourself in the ass for saying, why didn't they shut him down?
Look, I understand where they are. I understand that they got there last week. I believe that. I'm glad they didn't get there with 5 games left. Personally, I think with 4 games left, he should have played. But I think with 3, and given the context, and Quinn referred to this, and they knew this last week. They knew that the schedule was going to be a 6-day week for Philly and then another 5 days for Dallas. They just put off what they could have told us last week, which is shut down for the year. But it's precisely for the reason you described, the fear that imagine we have to hold the presser to talk about him being done for the first part of 2026 because he played against the Eagles and he ruptured an Achilles. All right, thanks. Mike and Ashburn, finish it up for us. Go ahead.
Kevin, this is the worst coach team I've ever watched. That first opening drive Sunday.
Yeah.
That first opening drive Sunday, I don't know how many holding penalties. What really blew a fuse for me was the kicker. He misses the extra point, hits the upright, and then he follows it up with kicking a kickoff out of bounds. And he ran off the field, and nobody said a word to him. When I was in high school playing at T.C. Williams, Herman Boone would have grabbed my face mask and said, "Mike, get your head in the game."
Did you play for Herman Boone?
I did.
That must have been
73.
interesting.
I'm older than you.
Yeah, that must have been fun. That must have been. How good were your teams?
We won a state championship in 1971.
Well done.
Against Andrew Lewis of Roanoke. We shut them out 28-0.
Nice.
We played 13 games and had we played 13 games and have 11 shutouts.
Wow. He was a hell of a defensive coach, wasn't he?
Anybody that's played competitively, Joe Gibbs' teams would have not lost 8 in a row. Guarantee it. It wouldn't have happened. And I'm afraid that they're going to keep this guy, and you're going to have this all over again next year.
Keep who? Quinn?
Because winning, isn't it interesting that winning coaches always win wherever they go, and losing coaches always lose wherever they go?
Well, he hasn't always lost. You know that, right?
Well, yeah, he was with Atlanta and blew a 3-touchdown lead in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, let's focus on the Super Bowl as part of that.
Well, I just don't think they're going to win with him. And I hate to see John
You understand,
Gruden
that's one of the funniest things I've heard people when they talk about Dan Quinn. Yeah, he sucks because he lost the biggest lead 28-3 in the Super Bowl. But he actually coached that team to the Super Bowl.
This year, when things don't get fixed in any business, most of the time they don't know how to fix it.
Right.
And that 8-game losing streak.
8-game losing streak with context, though, Mike. With context.
Well, every team in the NFL has injuries.
Not like this team did this year. Not like this team did this year. In terms of the players who were injured and lost, their best players, their biggest contributors, nobody was impacted by significant injuries to contributing players more than Washington was this year.
Well, I tell people this last year is what's messed everybody up, because last year, if they would have lost those last 6 games they won on the last play, they would have been 6-11. And the 2 previous years before Quinn got here, they were 4-13. And even if they had split those last 6 games, they would have been 9-8, and probably not even in the playoffs.
Yeah, but it was the last. So we're clear on this, it was the last 4 that they basically won on the
Was
last
it?
play before the
Okay.
playoff game, which was a fifth in a row. And they went into those last four 8-5 and in pretty good playoff shape because they had blown out teams like the Titans, where they won 42-19, the Panthers, where they won 40-7, the Cardinals early in the year, where they won 42-14, the Browns, where they won 34-13. They didn't inch out every single game on the last play of the game last year.
Well, the Eagles game, Crowder catch, and then the Dallas game,
right, which was meaningless because they
didn't.
They had already clinched their playoff position at 11-5.
You know, I was at the Bears game with about 17 guys, and 10 of them left with like 14 minutes left to play in the fourth quarter, and they were all standing there, and I was like, we were in the club level on the visitor side.
Why'd they do that?
And
Washington was never down big in that game. They led
I know,
most of the way.
I don't understand. Well, they didn't pay for the ticket. The ticket was free.
Yeah.
So they're like, I got to go. And we said, okay, see you. And there were 7 of us that left or stayed. And then I saw the ball and I'm like, he caught it. That was like Jason Worth's walk-off home run against the Cardinals.
I was there.
And
that was
you know,
dramatic.
and
but just, you know, the
24
Chiefs won. The Chiefs were something like 7-0 in one score late, finish games last year. And it happens. A lot of NFL games get played very tightly, and the teams that can win the majority of those end up being in the postseason, and those that don't end up being home watching. But in terms of the worst coach team you've ever seen, I think that the Minnesota game was a better example of that than the Giant game. But anyway, thanks, Mike. Appreciate the call. All right, I want to get to, when we come back, last night's Monday night game and whether or not the Steelers with Mike Tomlin headed towards another winning season are actually much more equipped to make a run this year than they've ever been. That's next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
He's the guy who deserves more playing time. On third down, got it to DK Metcalf. And fighting his way for the touchdown.
From Bluesy 58 sent this to me last week before the Steelers played the Ravens. He's clearly a Ravens fan. He writes, your blind belief for Aaron Rodgers is mysterious. He's terrible. Go Ravens. It's not a blind belief in Aaron Rodgers. I just said all of last year, if you're watching Aaron Rodgers rather than just hearing about Aaron Rodgers or reading box scores, you know he can still blanking sling it. Like throwing the football's not an issue for him. Last year, when you watched him with a terrible New York Jet team, it wasn't him. It was their bad defense and their bad kicker all season long. He actually looked good, really good at times, especially when they got Devontae Adams at the end of the year. And then this year, look, there have been, good moments, bad moments. Pittsburgh, their defense really was the most disappointing part of their team when they gave up, 33 to the Bengals with Joe Flacco on a Thursday night, when they got beat by the Packers, giving up it was 28 in the second half on Monday night game or a Sunday night game. The Bears and Caleb Williams lit them up. But Aaron Rodgers, I'm not, I've never been like a huge Aaron Rodgers fan. I respect it. I think he's one of the greatest throwers of the football in the history of the game. I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, when you talk about pure passers, Dan Marino, Sonny Jurgensen, Aaron Rodgers are in that conversation. I guess throwing a football is a little bit like a shooter in basketball. You can throw it at, 22 and you can sling it at 62 eventually. Aaron Rodgers can still sling the football, and he is still, an above the neck, football guru. I mean, he is got that team offensively to the level that no previous quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger and his health has had them at. Since, by the way, Bluesy's email to me, he was 23 of 34 last week for 284 and a touchdown and a win in Baltimore. And then last night, he was 23 of 27 for 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks against Miami. Real quickly, before I come back to the Steelers, man, what do you do if you're Miami? You owe Tua all that money. It's like $57 million, I think, guaranteed next year. You kept Mike McDaniel. They fired the GM. Look, Mike McDaniel's an offensive guy. He can get more out of less, and he usually does offensively. I don't know if he's a head coach. In fact, the whole getup, the showing up with sweats, hiked halfway up his knees, and the whole look is really, at times, it looks like, a ninth grader is coaching the Miami Dolphins. But it doesn't take away from his offensive wizard kind of creative abilities. But man, Tua, he just doesn't have the arm strength. And he can't read any sort of zone coverage. I saw a stat. Let me see if I can find it. It was something just terrible about him against zone coverage. He's just a disaster against zone coverage. And he threw an interception early in that game into zone coverage, a two-man pattern into zone coverage, and he threw it right to Asante Samuel. That would be Asante Samuel Jr. The father could have caught this pass at his age. It's a strange situation in Miami, man. I don't know what you do with Tua. You can't. I guess you could do what Denver did with Russell Wilson. You could eat it all next year, hope you land on a rookie quarterback, and then you're, the 1 seed a year later, which is the Denver situation. Remember, Denver ate, $80 million in salary cap burn, salary cap, dead cap penalty in 2024 or 2023, and then made the playoffs with Bo Nix last year, and now are a 1 seed. You could do that. I don't think Tua can do it. Now, with the quarterback conversation, what do we know? Because 6 years from now, he'll be 33 and he'll probably be playing at a high level. He'll have a whole new career. Who knows? How about just how Trevor Lawrence has turned around this season? But back to Pittsburgh. They're missing a lot. This is not a great team. They have pieces. You know who I've always liked, and Aaron Rodgers spoke glowingly of him after the game? Kenneth Gainwell, when he was in Philly, was a good change of pace back. He's been really good for Pittsburgh this year. He and Jaylen Warren are actually a much better combo than they've had there recently. They've got tight ends out the wazoo. They've got DK Metcalf. Their defense won a game last night without TJ Watt. Apparently, they're 1-10 lifetime in games without TJ Watt. Well, now they're 2-10. Pittsburgh is interesting because what they have now that they've never had when Mike Tomlin's won 9 or 10 games, qualified for the playoffs, and then failed to win a playoff game, is they actually have a competent quarterback who's getting better and more comfortable. They play Detroit this Sunday. Detroit must win. For Pittsburgh, it's not must. There's a way they can clinch the division before the season finale against Baltimore. They have Cleveland after Detroit. But Aaron Rodgers last night, at one point, I think he was 17 of 18, and the only incompletion was a flat-out throwaway. But he's played several games this year at a very high level, and others sometimes because of context, because their defense couldn't get off the field. He's had some struggles, but pretty good season, 22 touchdowns, 7 picks. He's throwing at a 66.8% completion percentage. I don't think, they were talking last night on the broadcast about the possibility that he ends up becoming a Pro Bowl quarterback this year. The AFC's got too many quarterbacks, right? I mean, Drake May's definitely, obviously, a Pro Bowler, but Josh Allen is a Pro Bowler without question. And then isn't Bo Nix and or Trevor Lawrence in that conversation? Daniel Jones was, not anymore. Maybe he's in the conversation to be an alternate Pro Bowler. Can Pittsburgh make a run? I don't think so, because I don't think their defense is good enough, and I don't think they're explosive enough offensively, but they have a high-level intellect quarterback who can still throw the football at an elite level. You saw that last year, even though that team was a mess, and you've seen it this year. He's got to stay healthy, clearly, because he got banged up there for a few weeks. Missed that game against Chicago, which they lost. If not, they'd have the division near sewn up at this point. They'll host a game. By the way, I was thinking about this, Max. The matchup won't be a good one for them as the 4 seed if they win the division. Big if still. Baltimore's still hanging in there. But they would face, more likely than not, Buffalo in a 4 or 5 game as long as New England holds on to the division. They just got thumped by Buffalo a few weeks ago in Pittsburgh. They could face the Chargers. They could face the Texans. I don't think anybody wants to face the Texans right now. You and I both have Rams-Texans Super Bowl.
Yep.
Now.
It's circled, baby. Feels like it. But I don't know if the Broncos...
Texans have to get into the postseason.
And Texans have to get into the postseason, but Phil Rivers is playing for the Colts, so there's that. Then they also have to go probably into Denver or Buffalo. We were talking about them having to go outside and play a game the other day. It's going to be tough, but I think Houston can do it. Like, that defense is good enough that I think it's going to travel, and it's going to play well enough in the cold that I think it's going to get it done. But I think the game that they either win or lose is going to end in like 13-9 is probably.
If Houston wins out and Jacksonville loses 1 and they play at Denver this week, I don't know who wins the tiebreaker because they split the regular season.
I'm not sure either.
And it looks like they'd have the same division, so it would go to common opponents next, not conference record, and that would take some time. But you don't take the wild card route to a Super Bowl victory, Be nice if Houston won that division and played at least one game at home, but Jacksonville's been rolling. Evan Washburn from CBS will join us at noon. I got a quick what do you got when we come back? So remember when Netflix bought some NFL games last year and this year, man, they got some games when the schedule came out in May. Dallas, Washington at 1:00. Kansas City, Denver. That's not a Netflix game. That's a night game. Detroit, Minnesota afterwards. The Christmas Day triple header is turning into a disaster. Dallas at Washington. Dallas likely eliminated with either a loss this weekend on their own or a Philly win in Washington on Saturday. They're eliminated from the postseason. Washington already eliminated. No Jayden Daniels playing. Then you get Detroit, Minnesota. Detroit still likely to be in the hunt, but it's possible that they could be eliminated from the playoff picture. Right now, in the playoff picture, Detroit sits very much on the outside looking in. They are at 8th. They're 8-6 behind the Packers at 9-4-1 and the 49ers at 10-4. They play Pittsburgh Sunday. If they lose to drop to 8-7 and Green Bay and San Francisco win, then they're eliminated from postseason. So they could be playing an eliminated Minnesota and then Detroit being eliminated. And then the night game, which I think is on NBC, maybe NFL Network on Christmas night. I don't think it's on NBC. I think it's on NFL Network, the final game. Sorry, it's on Amazon Prime. Denver at KC, no Pat Mahomes. Kansas City eliminated. Denver playing in that particular game, likely for seeding. The division title may be wrapped up at that point. The Chargers still with a shot. They sit 2 games behind Denver with 3 to go. The Chargers, by the way, actually, remember, if you recall, they actually beat the Broncos early in the season. So if they can get to a season finale in Denver down only 1 game, they got a shot at it. So Denver could be playing for more than just seeding. They could be playing for the division. But the Jags are the opponent this week, Denver and Jacksonville. Be interesting if Denver blew the division. The Chargers at Denver, season finale, week 18. Man, looking at those week 18 games, there are likely going to be a bunch of options. Kind of talked about this before, but week 18, you've got Chargers, Denver could be for the division. You've got Carolina, Tampa could be for the division. Baltimore, Pittsburgh could be for the division. That's 3 good options. Anyway, Evan Washburn next. Evan Washburn has been working for CBS for a while as a sports reporter, sideline reporter on some big games. Evan is local, lives in Annapolis, grew up, I think, somewhere near Baltimore, and was a big part of Delaware's 2007 Final Four run in lacrosse. We've had Evan on the show before. Enjoy his company. He's with us right now. Real quickly, you haven't worked one Washington game, right? You didn't have the Chargers game back in early October, late September?
Well, first of all, Kevin, that's the best lead-in I've gotten all season long on a radio show.
Well, I remember
so
you telling me
appreciate
about
that.
it the last time we talked.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's great. It's great. Good blast from the past. A little Delaware lax is always good to get in the mix. We had one Commanders game, week 3, I think it was. 4 in Atlanta.
Oh, in Atlanta. That was a CBS game. Yeah. That was probably Michael Penix by far and away. I mean, it's interesting about that game, Evan, because I think back to that game and I said, a lot of us were like, not sure if the defense really has arrived. They've only beaten the Giants and played well against the Raiders. And then the Falcons lit up that defense. And it was probably the best game Michael Penix Jr. had all year.
I think you're right. It feels like a lifetime ago, especially I imagine for you all and the ups and downs of following the team this year. But as you know, in this gig, after 1 week, it kind of flushes away and you're all in on the next week. But it was a time where we were still riding in terms of our coverage, just everything Washington had done the previous season. And yes, Jayden didn't play in that game. I think it was his last one before he came back from his first stint on the sideline. The vibes were still high, and it's been tough to watch from afar things go the way they have.
So from afar, the national perspective, really more so than anything else, what's your reaction to the team shutting him down for the final? It'll be the Final Four, including the game that was just played against the Giants.
I go back and forth on this, and I often just end up landing on what does the player want to do within reason. And I do think, and I would respect the decision on either side of that. If a player doesn't feel like they can be at 100% and really help the team, and then the team is out of contention, the diminished returns of just playing for the sake of playing, all that said, what it means to the people watching either on TV or in the stands to have a star player out there, I get all those things. And then conversely, if a guy's like, I want to play no matter what, then I would probably lean that way. It doesn't make me think anything less of the organization for them to make the decision to maybe just kind of look forward to next year and just allow their most important asset and player to be as healthy as possible and avoid anything that would linger into next year.
Yeah, I think they're just got to a point. They got to a point, Evan, where the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. At the end, with 3 games left, and short week for them heading into Philadelphia. Then another 5 days later on Christmas Day against the Cowboys. But for some of us, I wanted to see him play, and I think Jayden wants to play. To answer,
yeah, and I go
first
back,
part.
Kevin, to and they were still in contention at this point. And it's funny to see where it's now gone from sort of the narrative of it. But Joe Burrow, I know, came back for Thanksgiving, and a lot of the questions were, why are you back? And he had really pushed himself to come back from that toe injury, and he made the point that that's what we get paid to do. And I really respect that approach, especially when you're a guy like Joe who's making as much as he is and what it means to fans to be able to watch him play. But now it probably seems like a guy that maybe doesn't want to be out there as much, but it's a really tough line to walk, where you do have to have the view towards the future, but acknowledge that at the end of the day, they are competitors that want to compete, and they're also incredibly valuable to fans that kind of fund all of this to be able to see out there competing.
Yeah. What game did you have Sunday?
We were fortunate. We were in New England. We had Bills Patriots.
Wow. So tell me about that one, down 21-0. Some are saying it may have been Josh Allen's best game of his career. You were there on the sideline watching it. What did it look like to you?
It would have been the best game for probably 90% of the league's career. I'm not sure it'll be in Josh's top 5 when it's all said and done. He's just that special right now. it's cool, and you know this from like a coverage standpoint, when so much of our work and lead up to a game is not to lay out what we think is going to happen, but be able to react knowing what a team has done previous weeks and try and play that game a little bit. And everything in our meetings, both with the teams and with ourselves, was Buffalo's a second half team. They lead the NFL in second half point differential. They're comfortable in those critical moments. They would like to get off to faster starts, but it just doesn't seem to be part of their identity right now. They almost need to play from behind and have the weight of those kind of expectations on their shoulders going into these big games. And I think Josh is the leader of that. And he gives everybody on that team, both coaches and players, a ton of confidence that when they're down 21-0, it's like, cool, we got 17. He'll figure it out. And look, that's a tough way to live week in and week out. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's a formula for a Super Bowl run necessarily, but right now they're riding it in a big way. And it has me feeling like I love what Drake May's put together this year. I think Matthew Stafford deserves statistically and how good LA has played to be considered an MVP frontrunner or in that discussion. But for my money right now, Kevin, Josh Allen is the best football player, quarterback, whatever you want to call it, in the league.
It's not the best team he's had around him. With that
No
said,
doubt. Their defense is ravaged right now. They have their interior defensive line has been hit hard by injuries. They've lost both starting safeties. They were down their starting corner. They can't stop the run, and he's winning games comfortably in the mid-30s into 40s at times.
Yeah, I mean, they've given up 65 points in their last two games, both wins. They gave up 30-something to the Bucs a few weeks ago, a team that's actually struggled to score. But there's no Patrick Mahomes. It's very possible there will be no Lamar Jackson. But Mahomes, Burrow, Jackson, it could be just him, along with Bo Nix and Drake May and Trevor Lawrence and this Houston team that I've loved for about a month and a half now. Do you think that Buffalo can take advantage of this odd year in the AFC and get it done?
100%. And I'm glad you brought up Houston, because that's the one team that is a really bad matchup for Buffalo. You can look at the recent games the two have played, and even Josh, to us, mentioned Houston on Saturday, and we were just talking about, hey, what are the defenses and approaches defensively that give you trouble? And he brought up Houston because of their ability to get after the passer with four. And that's because of Will Anderson Jr. and Daniil Hunter on those edges. That matchup to me is the one of the current playoff picture where you go, man, maybe he can't be Superman in that game. And that puts their defense in a vulnerable position of having to play above what they've shown in terms of their standard right now due to all their injuries. But outside of that, I would probably, we're not in the business of picking games, but I feel the best right now about Buffalo in the current playoff picture.
All right, well, let's stick in the AFC. You've already mentioned Houston. I think a lot of people now are on Houston, and if they get in, and it still could be as a division winner, although Jacksonville's really played well recently, but I don't know. Defense travels, and they've got the best defense in the league right now. But what do you make of Denver and New England likely to be the top two seeds?
I think, and I'm trying not to be a prisoner of what I just witnessed on Sunday, and then getting on the plane and being able to watch at least the second half of the Denver-Green Bay game. I think Denver, because of what they have defensively, probably more equipped to have a deeper run in the playoffs. And if things play out or hold out, they might be able to be the top seed and host a divisional round at least. And then if they're to win that, obviously an AFC championship game. I've been to Denver for an AFC championship game back in the Manning days. That place, when it's right, is rocking. Yeah. The altitude's a real thing, both in the literal sense, and I think it's a mental hurdle for some teams coming in there. You mentioned Jacksonville, Kevin. I really think people, for obvious reasons, are kind of pushing them to the side because it's Jacksonville. I think the market does that. I think Trevor Lawrence is still a question mark at times, but if there wasn't Houston doing what they're doing defensively, we'd all have our alarms off for what Jacksonville's done defensively. They're the number one rush defense in the NFL. And we know in the playoffs, teams lean on the run game. And if you can't run on them, I do think they're a nasty group that can maybe surprise some people here down the stretch. But of the New England, Denver, kind of the new kids to the party, if you will, probably feel better about Denver right now. I think New England, how they respond to what they experienced, and it's never easy to probably for them to admit this. I think they'll benefit from having a second half collapse like they did, because they're still going to win the division, just the way it lines up with it schedule-wise.
Right.
I mean, I should say they should win the division. So they're going to host a playoff game probably in the wild card round. And I think what happened against Buffalo could benefit them down the road, because they have the right guy. I mean, Braves is so good at using everything that a team experiences, both positively and negatively, to help push them forward in a positive way.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that he isn't the coach of the year when all is said and done, even though, you've got some really good options, obviously, with Chicago and Ben Johnson, and even with Sean Payton at this point. But I think Vrabel right now has to be, I haven't even looked at it, Max, recently, but I'm assuming Vrabel's the favorite to win coach of the year.
I believe he is, but I'm not 100% sure. I got to double check.
Evan, you mentioned, by the way.
I agree.
Go ahead.
Just because of, I think Ben Johnson would be his probably top competitor for it. But one of the things that surprised me when we were prepping for the game, they've played in the top, it's hovered based off of bye weeks, but top 5 in terms of rookie snap totals. So it's not even that he flipped the culture in 1 year, but he's playing mostly young guys, and May's a second-year player. So to do it the way that they've done it with the amount of youth that he has playing in critical spots also speaks to what he's been able to do.
You mentioned Jacksonville. Jacksonville, second in the league in takeaways behind Chicago, who's number 1. Number 3 on that list, and they've started to do it more recently, and I'm just curious, we'll stay in the AFC for another minute. We're talking with Evan Washburn from CBS Sports. He'll be on Bills Browns this weekend in Cleveland. You've had some good weather games. Maybe another one coming on Sunday. At Evan Washburn on X and on Twitter. I talked a little bit about Pittsburgh on the show today. Like I actually liked what I saw last year from Aaron Rodgers. I thought in watching the Jets, it was far from him. He could still sling it. He could still throw it. And last night you saw it. You saw it against Baltimore. They're starting to take the ball away. I'm not suggesting they're a threat to go to the Super Bowl, but do you think they're a possibility to win a playoff game? What are your thoughts on the Steelers?
No doubt. If nothing else, they're going to be a massive headache for whoever has to face them in the wild card round for all the reasons you laid out. And they're going to be comfortable in what could be a nasty game, whether it's based off of weather or just the style of play. And I agree with you. I think Aaron has, over the last few games and especially last night, kind of looked the best he's looked. And I mean, I was just looking and laughing as we were about to hop on here. Alan Lazard just got released from the Jets.
Oh boy.
So maybe they bring him into Pittsburgh. I mean, he has now been able to do what he's done the last few years and kind of surround himself with the style of players. And we've had a ton of Steeler games this year. I think our total's at 5, maybe 6. So I feel really good about what they've been able to do over the course of the season, where they are. And look, it's a lot of the same outside of the big change under center in terms of Aaron. But what perception is on the outside, whether it's the attention on Mike Tomlin and where he is in terms of his job and his future in Pittsburgh and the polarizing nature of Aaron Rodgers, I don't ever get the sense when I'm in that building that it really affects them that much. It almost feels like they thrive in that type of environment.
All right, real quickly before we exit the AFC. So you've got Buffalo getting through and getting to the Super Bowl?
Oof. Oh, man, you're really getting me.
It sounds like Buffalo, Denver for you, one or the other.
Yeah, that would I'd be okay with that. And we get to do that game at CBS. So if you're telling me I'm in Denver for one of the sidelines and it's Buffalo and Denver, that sounds great from an atmosphere and a matchup too. That defense against Josh Allen. So let's roll with that. That works for me, Kev.
All right. What about the NFC? Are you a believer in the Rams like a lot of us?
No doubt. I mean, I think that the efficiency in which they're playing offense, not surprising based off of who their head coach and play caller is and what Matthew's been able to do really his entire career, but really right now. But I think people, for obvious reasons, because we always go to that side of the ball, their defense is pretty dynamic as well. And I guess my biggest question mark would be, but if they're hosting this whole thing, they wouldn't have to deal with conditions. It's like I always think of some of those teams that are rolling in a dome, Detroit in the previous seasons. It's like, all right, what happens if they got to go somewhere in early or mid-January and playing what I've been living in the last few weeks? It's like that does change things a little bit, but they're going to be hosting for the most part, so they should be fine.
Yeah, the game.
I like Seattle too, though. I should say. I mean, I'm excited. We have them in a couple weeks, and I just think maybe it's based off of geography. Whenever I go to Seattle, I feel like I've, in some ways, just based off the length of the flight, left the country. But I don't think enough people are acknowledging just how good that group is. And it was a grinder against the Phillip Rivers story last week, but they're a good squad.
Yeah, they play Thursday night in Seattle. And we've had a lot of weather-affected games here over the last 3 or 4 weeks. This one, flood watches for the Pacific Northwest. It's basically raining, not that this is unusual, but heavy rain between now and like next Wednesday. So Thursday night could be an absolute.
That's what we're laying out. Yeah, they can't avoid it. And that could be for the division and,
it could be for the
possibly
division.
the top seed.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're telling me the NFC is running through Seattle, then it's a different discussion. But it would be hard to pick. And I'm loving what Sam's been able to do and just kind of, basically turn his career in an opposite direction in a positive way, and Mike McDonald. But it'd be hard to go against Sean and Matthew in a whether it's, a NFC Championship game environment.
It's so interesting about Sam Darnold, Evan, because for a guy they won 14 games last year in Minnesota. They've already got 11. So he's won 25 games and he's still got 3 left this year. But there's still a lot of doubt about Sam Darnold. A lot more doubt about him than obviously Matt Stafford and, even the Jordan Love. I mean, and I saw it at the end of last year. Like there still seems to be a lot of risk with Darnold. I don't trust him, but to your point, if they win in terrible weather Thursday night and they've got an opportunity to host these playoff games in Seattle, that would be more difficult for an LA or a Green Bay, and who knows if it'll be Green Bay at this point without Parsons. But yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, Sam Darnold, interesting, right? That Minnesota, was fine with letting him go. Not that they had the choice. He had the choice as an unrestricted free agent. But for a guy that's won 25 games and might win more in 2 years, he does not get the benefit of the doubt, I don't think.
It's a great point. And it's a great example from my perspective of just what a first impression at that position can do to you, both positively and negatively, and where you're drafted. And I always think back to, on top of that, look, he didn't play well in some of his early opportunities in New York. I would say he's an example 1A of what environment you get drafted into can really, really hurt you in a lot of ways. And then on the flip side, if you're fortunate enough to get drafted into a place that knows how to nurture the position and really bring you up in the right way, things can go very differently. But even and look, it's probably more in our world, but I think it trickles into just how teams perceive him. When on Monday Night Football, they used that mic'd up piece where he said, "I see ghosts." I think that was something that has stuck with him for a long time, unfairly. And it just creates this sense of like, all right, well, when is he going to turn into the Sam Darnold we all saw the first few years of his career? And the reality is, especially with Sam, I mean, I don't have his numbers in front of me, but I want to say he's still only probably 27, 28, maybe at the most.
That sounds
he drafted
right.
young.
Yeah.
He was really young, and I just think he was in a tough spot. And it's funny, we were dealing with this with Daniel Jones. We had a bunch of Colt games before he tore his Achilles. And look, it had started to turn a little bit, and I don't know if that was all on Daniel. I guess we'll find out here if he does come back with the Colts once he gets healthy. But even when he was playing the position as good as anyone, if not better, in the first 8 weeks of the season, everybody's just waiting. It's like, when are you going to do the thing you did the first time we saw you? So I think it's probably not going to change, but at that position, the way we evaluate it now from the outside, probably more so than from the team side, we can't ever unsee some of the tough stuff we see in those first couple of years for a quarterback. That's what makes Jayden, I mean, just to bring it back to where you guys are as a market and the fan base, I think Jayden's benefiting this year as he's fought through the health issues because everybody saw what they saw last year. So, like, that's still in our heads in terms of the perception of Jayden Daniels, and he'll be able to benefit from that as he gets healthy and hopefully comes back in a similar fashion next season.
Yeah. That quarterback position, man, giving up on guys or declaring anything as an absolute is really dangerous because of the different, paths they all take. And to your point, getting drafted into a bad team, but eventually getting the experience with Kyle and then Kevin O'Connell, you just don't know what it will take. So in the NFC, you like the Rams, but two other teams real quickly. Are you a believer in Chicago in terms of the ability to hang on, win that division, and maybe threaten to go deep into the postseason? And then what are your thoughts on the Eagles?
I think Chicago will win the division because of what's transpired with Green Bay.
Yeah.
The Parsons injury. I haven't seen. Is there Watson? Have they given
Watson may play, believe it or not, Saturday night. There's a chance.
Okay. All right. Well, if he's able to go and he's healthy down the stretch here, that changes things a little bit because he's a dynamic guy for that offense. I think Green Bay is more suited to win the division and make a deeper run. But if health is going to stand in the way, which is often the case this time of year, then I could see Chicago win it. I don't think as an offense they are ready to play the type of game and style of game they might have to play against a Rams team, and whether it's a divisional round or an NFC title game, if it's indoors. Ben Johnson still has some real guardrails on what Caleb Williams is able to do, and I think to both their credit, they've acknowledged that this is what we have to do this year. We hope that we can graduate to another level next season, but their main priority is run the ball and limit mistakes. And they've been able to do that. But as you know, in those big moments and big games, sometimes you got to open things up and make a play or two here or there. So I would not feel as confident having seen Chicago in person. Had them twice this year. It's been an incredible turnaround. To me, it doesn't feel like a team that's built to make a real run at a Super Bowl or maybe even an NFC title game. And then, Philadelphia, it just feels like this is what that market is. This organization is. The team is like immensely talented. It's a constant just fight through distractions, both that they can create and or the outside seems to create. And I would always bet on talent or feel confident saying like, hey, the flip switch and they can figure out a way to harness all the good, the bad, the distraction, all of it, and make a run, it wouldn't shock me at all. But it does seem like it's been an exhausting season. And sometimes, as we know, and you see it now with Kansas City, like, you live in that world of being at that game in terms of the Super Bowl, you're playing late into the year. Like it takes its toll. So that would be kind of where I would probably land on Philadelphia. If they got hot and they got on a run, wouldn't surprise me. But right now, it just feels like a team that's kind of fighting to avoid letting all that stuff on the outside just weigh them down too much.
All right, switching subjects and kind of focusing just briefly before I let you go, and I appreciate the time as always.
Sure.
On what you do, I always find it interesting, and I have said this for many years, that the broadcast team that's calling your home team's game, you should listen very carefully, especially at the beginning. Sometimes sideline reporters, with tidbits of information and even a tell on how something's being handled. And the reason I say that is you guys get access that I think is more honest, and it's for informational reasons, etc. And you find a way, whether it's the play-by-play guy and the analyst or someone like you, to disseminate that information during the course of a game. Tell everybody what you guys kind of get access to. And if you think I'm right, that you're in a position where you end up getting stuff that maybe people on the beat don't get, or, even a national interview during the course of a week doesn't generate.
I think you're spot on. And yes, we spend, so the way it works, I'll use this weekend for an example. I'll fly into Cleveland first thing in the morning, go right to the facility from the airport, go to practice, and then we'll sit in a meeting room. It'll be myself,
Tomorrow?
Ian Eagle, JJ Watt. No, Friday.
Friday. Yeah, exactly.
So home team's always on Friday. So our broadcast crew, myself, Ian, JJ, and then our producer and director will sit in a room starting with the head coach, quarterback, and then we select a offensive player and a defensive player of note that we're interested in talking to. And it's between, I would say, 10 to 20 minutes with each person, usually go longer with the head coach. And there's no cameras, there's no recording devices. It's on the record technically, unless they obviously say off the record and then pencils down kind of deal. But what I think, to your point about it's important to listen, because we do get, I would say, sometimes, deeper information or context is kind of the way I view it. It's really based off of trust and time served at the job, because one of the things we take a lot of pride in, and I know I do, is just because a coach said it to you in a meeting doesn't mean it's time for you to go say it on the air. And we don't tweet anything we hear in a meeting right when we get out of it. All that information is basically embargoed until you hit the air on Sunday at 1. Maybe you use some of it in a pregame report in that 11 to 12 range in terms of the time of our shows. But it's really about attribution. And I think, there are times when it's really important to say, Dan Quinn told us this, or Jayden Daniels told us this. But it's not everything they told you, because it's not fair to them to then have to answer questions, whether it's from the beat media, who I respect a ton. I've been in that spot, and I know. And look, we get a lot of our information from the beat media, and we're prepping for a game. They're a massive role in everything we do. But sometimes if we attribute everything we hear in a meeting, in our meetings, then they then have to answer the question twice. So it really comes down to just time served on the job, knowing like, hey, when is it something you're just using the information to like help give better context to the viewer, or as opposed to like true hardcore reporting where you do need to quote somebody on it. And it took me a little while, and I'm lucky to have worked with a lot of really talented and experienced people to know that dance. And that's now where we are with it, where it's like, hey, the meetings are the gold mine for us. And you really have to respect that time and really how you use that information. Don't be reckless with it, because everybody's watching, everybody's listening. And we have these teams a bunch. Like I'm having Buffalo back-to-back weeks. If you are, reckless in these meetings, like they're not going to talk to you the same way the next time around. So it really requires a lot of care, I would say.
Is there a coach that it's almost impossible to get anything out of, other than Belichick?
I was going to say that. I mean, and that's always kind of, I guess, was the go-to at times. And I will say, and he was great with me. Like he's an Annapolis guy, so he was really kind of. I mean, we could talk about.
And he loves lacrosse.
And we could talk about that stuff all day long. But he didn't. In our meetings, he was similar to the way he was in the press conferences, where he kept information close, especially when it came to like his team. No, I think honestly, Kevin, and I'm not trying to like just kind of dance the question. We're in a really good place. And I think maybe I'm just benefiting from this being my 12th year doing it and working with a guy like Ian, and now JJ, even though he's new to broadcasting, comes in and he carries a lot of equity as a former player and future Hall of Famer. Like we don't get a lot of stonewalled when we go into these meetings. But it goes back to, I think, or our hope, and sometimes they've let us know it's true. They know if they talk to us, the information is going to be handled properly, if that makes sense.
Is there, I guess the last one, and I'm taking up too much of your time, but is there somebody that you guys, not just you, but the other broadcast teams, you would say that dude is so smart, so super sharp, and not everybody knows that?
In terms of a coach?
Yeah, coach or player.
Coach or player.
Like somebody who is just super impressive for whatever reason that people wouldn't know or think.
Well, I will say, getting to know Liam Cohen, going back to, like, I'm trying to think, because everybody knows, like, Mike Tomlin's awesome. Like, he gets it. Mike Vrabel. Like, these guys are celebrities. I mean, they're on TV and on podiums multiple times a week. So any football fan, and obviously anybody in the media, is going to know who's good at kind of commanding a room and handling themselves. But I've been really impressed. I didn't know Liam Cohen that well. I mean, obviously he was in Tampa the year before. We had a few of their games, but didn't spend a lot of time with him at all. And we've had a couple Jags games. And what really struck me was the way he handled, we did the game in Houston where they collapsed in the fourth quarter.
Davis Mills,
and, yeah. And I honestly, and this goes back to the Commanders, I was thinking, man, this reminds me of Chicago after that Hail Mary against the Commanders. Like, I could see their season going in that direction. And to see what he did in that building, and then we were there a couple weeks later to keep them, and then now they haven't lost since, or maybe they dropped one.
No, they haven't lost since. That was their last game.
And then we sat with them a couple weeks ago, and he just went into such detail about what they did in the hours, really, in the days after that loss. And it's the stuff like that where he gets our process. Like, maybe he said some of that at the podium. I wasn't listening to every one of them in the weeks or the days afterwards, but it's like he gave us the context necessary so that when we went on the air, like, we could help tell this team's story. And I do think that that's our responsibility. Like, we live in the world of, specific to our role as the broadcast crew. It's like we're in the entertainment and news business. Like, our first job is to entertain and inform. When news pops up that needs to be reported, whether it's injuries, things off the field that impact that game specifically, we'll get into it. But our job is to, help accurately depict what's going on in those buildings for the fans that are watching the game for 3 hours. And Liam's one of those guys where it's like, you walk out of the room, you're like, one, I see why they're good. And two, I kind of hope they keep rolling, because it's good to have guys like him around moving forward. Like Sean's been like that, McVay in LA, where you do things selfishly. Man, I like to get to know this person so that I can keep having someone when we go into these meetings. I feel like, because it's also tricky where we're coming in, we haven't seen you really all season. We might see you for the first time in week 10. And it's like, you never want to go in there and be like, all right, so tell me about the first 10 weeks of the season. But if you ask targeted questions that allow them to explain to you, like, hey, where was this team? Where are you now? Kind of deal. And have somebody really kind of deliver you the necessary information without giving away secrets. Like, that's the other thing. We're rarely ever, maybe, the analyst and JJ will need some information about, like, hey, what are you thinking on third down if you see this front or one of those deals. And some guys, are open to it with him or any analyst. But for the most part, our stuff is not necessarily trying to give away secrets. It's going to help competitively the other team. It's more like, hey, how do we accurately paint the picture of what this group's about?
All right, you get a break Sunday, sunny and 37 degrees in Cleveland. That's
I'll
mild.
take it, man. And honestly, like, I was watching because we have Browns, you're right. I was watching their Chicago game back yesterday, and there is nothing better. Like, again, go back to the entertainment side of it. When you're watching a game and you just see everyone's breath, and it's it feels like, now granted,
one of these days, Evan, we're not too far away, maybe 10, 15 years away from everybody indoors, or most everybody indoors. I got to run. Thank you.
Buffalo's building a new
Buffalo, except for
stadium.
Buffalo. Right.
Yeah. And
we'll
it's funny.
see.
They built a new stadium. There'll be zero wind, which I really appreciate. They've done something architecturally where the wind is like a zero impact, even if it's howling, which it often is out there. But they're open air, man. Like, you got to keep some of that stuff going.
Thanks for doing this. Hope you're well.
Yeah, appreciate you. See ya.
Evan Washburn, everybody. Ben Standing next. Ben Standing's with us because he's our team insider and because we had a big story yesterday. Normally with us on Monday and Friday, but with us right now. I think you and I pretty much predicted this a week ago when we heard it on Wednesday that Jayden was out for the Giant game, and we thought the coach was kind of telegraphing what was to come. But what was your reaction, and what have you learned about why this shutdown?
Yeah, can't say it's a surprise. We obviously had a passionate debate among the people before Jayden came back to play against the Vikings, whether he should play or whether he shouldn't play. And I stand by that call to say, hey, with 5 games to go, there's still plenty of time. He needs to work, all that stuff. But then when the randomness that he lands on the elbow takes him out of that game. And basically the moment that Dan Quinn took him out of that game signaled to me that they were, getting close to saying enough's enough and moving on. So he's still not cleared for contact according to Quinn. My sense was that he was dealing with like a pain tolerant situation. They have said there was no structural damage. Nothing's really changed. So sounds like it was a bit of a pain situation. Now Jayden said he wants to play, but obviously Quinn is saying, nah, we're going to call it here. And, again, I think it had reached the point, even though when he said last week, Dan Quinn, that, the Seattle game did not help shape this decision. I just find that hard to believe, especially with the way they took him out and then didn't put him back in against Minnesota when Quinn said he could have gone back in. So, it's obviously a huge bummer that he will only have played in 7 games and finished only 3 of them, I think. And
finished 4 of them, but only played in 3 start to finish fully healthy. The Green Bay game he finished, but was injured for the last, quarter or whatever.
Right. So yeah, huge, huge bummer. Needless to say, across the board, and they'll have to do some internal deep diving into, kind of what's going on here. Do they have to do something more to help protect him? I would just say that for the people who are like, he's always going to get hurt and all that, when the injuries are random the way they have been for him, that's to me a very different deal than if it's like the knee or something, some body part is over and over and over again is chronically getting hurt. Those to me are different things. It's not nothing. It's great, but it's just say it feels like it's more random than the other way. So that to me is like sort of the hope that it is just that, and they can find ways to, whether it's limiting certain play calls to keep him out of harm's way, or really hammering home to him, hey, you've got to find a way to get down, avoid hits, etc. But all that said, yeah, I'm not surprised that this happened. It's again a huge bummer, but the whole season's been a huge bummer, so ties in together.
Yeah, so what I said was, we could sit here and nitpick and parse out everything they've said going back to post-game Minnesota. He could have come back in. Doctors cleared him, to being sore on Monday, to being out for the Giant game on Wednesday, to being done and shut down yesterday. But what's the point? Because ultimately, your question about the Seattle game, and last week, this team didn't shut Jayden Daniels down because he's injured. They shut him down for the fear that they'd have a real conversation at some point in front of all of you guys talking about a real injury. Cautionary fear for fear itself. The worst case scenario is what they wanted to avoid. And it's a lot easier to do that with 3 games left, and the first one on a short, build up week, the second one 5 days later. We all understand that. But if they had something to play for this weekend, he'd be playing. He would have played the Giant game. He would have played the remainder of the Minnesota game. That's what I believe to be true, and I think you agree with me. My question to you would be, do you blame them at this point for doing it? Are you okay with it?
Yeah, look, again, last year he played 2 to 3 games with a rib injury that he himself, Jayden, claimed to have been broken. So clearly, but that was a special year, right? They were already had a winning record. They were already, achieving more than people would have expected. And so he kept going. Obviously, you'd like to think they didn't put him in harm's way, and he did obviously fight through it and played very well soon after.
No, I mean, look, I don't blame it. Look, you know what? For the people who are questioning it, if you were saying they shouldn't have put him out there to begin with against the Vikings, and you're going to take that victory lap, I would actually say that you're part of the blame, because part of the issue here is public relations. They can say it's not, but that is absolutely part of it. Well,
now you're going to give those people credit for accomplishing what they wanted done.
Well, I'm just saying at the point here where it's now with 3. I mean, look, you and I have been saying good to go, but if we get to, like, say 2 games left and he still hasn't gone in, then what's the point? Now, assuming that the medical clearance is legit, that he has not been given clearance and he doesn't play this week, it's a short week. Now you're down to 2 games, so at that point, shutting him down makes sense. Now, could they have waited a couple more days the way every other time Dan Quinn has said, like when he came before the Vikings, he's like, well, we're going to play out the week and make sure we're not going to miss a step. Okay, well, they're not playing out the week this time. They're just going for it and saying he's out. So, I think if the doctor is saying he's not clear, gives the team the clearance to say, okay, he's out this game, and now they're on the Ben Kevin thought process of 2 games. The risk isn't worth the reward, and moving on. So I think it's fine that what they're doing now. Like I said, it's just it's just a huge bummer. And look, I think also, even though it's 1 game and it doesn't make a difference ultimately, beating the Giants, at least for a week, does give a different, it does feel better for everybody involved. If they had lost that game, I'm not saying that they would have put Jayden in just to help snap a losing streak, but I think also that makes it a little bit easier to not have to consider it either, because they did win, and the losing streak aspect of the red game, that's pretty minor, but I do think there's something to be said for, the human element in that regard. So I have no problems with this decision. It's what it is at this point.
I said earlier that they could have easily gotten away with, and I actually would have preferred if they had been a little bit more direct and just said, look, we're shutting him down because he's our franchise quarterback and he's too valuable to risk with a few meaningless games left in what's already been kind of a miserable and lost season. They didn't do that, but I would have preferred that. Were you okay with the messaging? Standing behind this, not cleared to play against Philly?
Well, if they do what you just suggested, now they're sort of contradicting themselves again, because Dan Quinn said that these reps matter. So why would that have changed just because of the injury? But if he's not,
because 3 games left, short week to Philly, 5 games, etc. It's a different conversation at 5, with 5 games left.
Yeah. I'm saying he would have only missed the 1 if he could have played this game and conceivably the rest. And it's still, he's playing 4 of the 5, not 5. So, but by saying, hey, he's still not cleared, they can still say, hey, we think the reps are important, but he's not cleared to play. Jayden really wants to. And also, by doing that, it makes it, there's no questioning Jayden's toughness. I would have a hard time anybody doing that anyway, based on what we've seen so far from him in his career. But yeah, I think this is sort of the easy way. Like I said, if they were really considering putting him in, why wouldn't you just wait till the last day of the week here? He's going to be practicing anyway, right? They already said he's going to be.
Yeah, they're not using an IR spot, and they're not filling his roster spot with anybody, which I think is kind of silly. But it's because they want him to practice. Okay.
Right.
Let me get to what I mentioned to you last week after, we came to the conclusion on Wednesday that we were going to get this news yesterday. And that is, why play Terry? Why play Tunsil? Why play Luvu? Why play anybody that is going to be a key contributor, cornerstone to what you hope is a resurrectional, 2026 season?
Yeah, look, Dan Quinn, you're saying today that Tunsil's not going to practice. Again, to me, without knowing what the injury is, we know it's an oblique, but to what degree is the issue? And they had the shoulder also. Typically with offensive linemen, they're rub some dirt on it and go back out there and play guys. And how, I don't know, but why do that here? What's the point of telling Tunsil go out there and do it? Especially, if Jayden was playing, that might be another story. And I think, that's the thing for me is this is the opportunity to figure out which guys you want to play and which guys you want to, just bubble wrap essentially going in to next year. So, if Terry, you can't leave it up to the players necessarily if you want to do something, But if Terry's like, look, I basically have missed all this season, I got to play. Okay, but here, at some point here, I would think, even if it's just the last game, you've got to probably take some of these guys and say, okay, it's been cool. We'll see you next season. So I would have no issue with that. And also, of course, I'm sure I can hear people saying, well, what about like a Bobby Wagner? He's not hurt, but he's in. Him playing means Jordan McGee is not playing middle linebacker. We've talked about this for some time. If you're ever going to do it, I mean, now's the time. If not this week, next week. So that's the type of move you could make. But yes, I agree. If there's any question, I would start looking to sit some guys who are going to be key pieces for you for next year, since you're already making that call with the most important piece.
All right. We'll have many of these conversations to come. But right now, number one on the off-season to-do list is what?
Typically I answer this question in some form of in terms of positions, obviously we know they need an edge rusher. They've got to figure out the receiver situation. Noah Brown goes on IR today. That's just a shame for him. But I just think in general, they've got to get speed all over the lineup. Like that, to me, again, that can be at any position, almost anywhere. They've got to get younger faster. We know that they were the oldest team in the league, and part of that also means you're going to be, you're not going to necessarily be the fastest team. And they've got to get more of that speed on the field. So I think from a roster perspective, to me, that's got to be top of mind. And then, from there, I think internally they just have to have a sit down and have an honest, what's tell the truth Monday. They got to have to tell the truth every day internally about what went wrong here. And injuries I think are top of the list. That's fair, but it's not just injuries. And they have to, I think, before they figure out what they want to do with free agency or the draft or anything, or which guys they want to resign, they got to figure out what the heck went wrong this season and how do they make sure it doesn't happen again.
All right, last one, and I'll let you go, and I appreciate you doing this. So if somebody didn't watch any of the season and they said, so how was Jayden Daniels' second season after what he did last year? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I would just, incomplete, never really got started. I mean, the fact that, again, week 2 he gets hurt and then doesn't complete another pass to Terry McLaurin until week 14 after they had such great success last year, kind of says it all, both in terms of availability and just how the season went by. I don't think it really, other than maybe that Chargers game, I don't know that he ever came close to looking like the guy he did a year ago. But at the same point, we no matter who it is, we often make quarterbacks have to be superheroes, and they can leap tall buildings in a single bound by themselves. But as we've seen this year with Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and others, it isn't just the quarterback. You've got to have things aligned up right. And when they lost the injuries at receiver, when they had the injuries at receiver, it just really crushed this offense across the board. So between his injuries, other guys being out, this season just never really got going. And then, the injuries just wrecked him for sure. So, to me, it's as a grade, it would have to be incomplete, because I don't think it was like he was terrible. It's just that the circumstances around him did not allow, and his own injuries, they just never allowed him to take off like he did last year.
Of course it's incomplete. He only played 3 games out of 17 start to finish healthy. That's the answer. I mean, I don't know how it becomes anything else, especially if you go to the other 4 games in which he played in. Look at who was on the field with him. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it. I'll talk to you later, I'm sure.
Awesome, man. See you.
Ben Standig, everybody, at Ben Standig on X on Twitter. Really good Last Man Standing Substack column. I recommend very much subscribing to that. Ben writes and writes often and writes well. Does a great job with all of that, covering the team. And there's going to be a lot in this offseason. I mean, everything they got to do on defense, everything you want them to do from a coaching staff standpoint. The draft, they're going to have a high enough pick for it to matter. A lot will be going on. Hey, I wanted to say just one thing real quickly before I leave, because we did not talk about this yesterday, nor should we have talked about it yesterday. So Maryland on Saturday night played a game at home against number 2 ranked Michigan. I talked about Michigan being having one of the great starts to any season in recent memory in college basketball. I mean, they had blown out Gonzaga by 40. They had beaten Auburn by 30. I mean, ranked teams they were beating regularly by 30 and 40. They had just beaten Rutgers by 41, Villanova by 28. And Maryland was the biggest underdog. They were getting 19.5 points Saturday night at Xfinity Center. The biggest underdog they've ever been at home since Gary's first tournament team in 1993-1994. They've never been a bigger underdog at home. And this game was insane. Maryland led 50-45 at halftime, but they lost their overall best player, Pharrell Payne, to another leg injury, which we still don't know what it was. And Maryland built a 9-point lead on Michigan in the second half, largely because David Diggy is his nickname, Coit, went off. He was 8 of 12 from behind the arc, and the Terps had a 9-point lead on Michigan in the second half. A lot of you have asked me, would they have won the game with Pharrell Payne had he come out in the second half? I don't know, but Solomon Washington getting his second technical and getting booted was just stupid and really cost them. But that would have been one of the bigger upsets, and it was trending that way. If you don't know the final score, I guess you can look it up. They lost by 18, I'll tell you. They ran out of gas, to say the least. But what a thrilling effort, and I don't know where it came from because Maryland is not that good right now as a college basketball team. Done. Chris Russell's next.